everybody, it's Pivot here, and we are about to do part 2 of our question and answer video. And in part 2, I'm going to cover food resupply and gear, and then we'll see if we have enough time for more. Okay, let's jump right into it. So food resupply. So I did answer some food stuff in my logistics category. But so some of these answers may or may not be repeated, but we'll see. Okay, so question 1, how did I ration my food? Well, I tried really hard not to have to ration food. So what I would do is I would calculate how many days it was going to be between town stops based on how far I thought that I would be hiking. So if I thought, okay, the next town is 7 days, I would make sure that I would have 7 days of breakfast, 7 days of lunch, 7 days of supper, and then however many snacks I needed to encompass those 7 days. I really tried very hard to make sure that I would have enough food because I did not want to have to ration. And I think there was only one section where I felt I didn't quite have enough. I was always like, hiker hunger had really kicked in, and I really could have eaten my whole entire bag, but I had to force myself to like just eat my allotted amounts because I would have run out otherwise. And there was another time where I did short myself a few days, and I don't even know how I did it. In fact, Desert Moon and Woodsy, we all shorted ourselves in that one section, so we don't know how we did it. So we did kind of have to ration a little bit, but yeah, I would typically just try and calculate how many days and then buy the appropriate amount of food so that I was not having to ration. The only things that I would typically ration would be like my bag of M&Ms or my bag of popcorn. I didn't separate those into individual daily bags. I had them in one big bag, and I would just eat till I felt like I didn't want any more. And I never ran into a situation where I ran out. So, did I stick to any strict foods or any must-have foods? So I don't have any dietary restrictions or requirements. So I didn't have any like strict foods per se. But I did find that certain foods tasted better. They gave me energy for longer. They kept me full longer. So I definitely am a creature of habit. So when I found something that worked for me, I definitely tried to stick to it. Like I really, really liked the Super Slam Pro bars for breakfast. And if I didn't have those, excuse me, my backup plan then was the, what are they called? Nature Baked? The fig bars, like the blueberry or the raspberry, I'm sure they're called Nature Baked fig bars. I would have them instead, but definitely my go-to was the Pro bars. They were just so filling for me. And when I couldn't find either of those things, I'd be like, oh my God, what am I going to eat for breakfast? And it's the same for snacks and for lunches and suppers. If I couldn't find that thing that I really like to eat, I would be like, okay, well, now what? But I would say, so the Pro bars were definitely kind of a must-have for me. Snickers, I had to have 1, if not 2 Snickers a day. I had to have M&Ms. In the end, I had to have Munchies. Most of my must-haves were definitely in the snack category. So how did I plan the logistics of food resupply? And I think I already answered this in the logistics section. So I'm just going to keep it brief. Basically, my logistics planning around food was to purchase as I go. And again, just to calculate how far the next town stop was going to be. And I would purchase that amount of food for that amount of time. Yeah, short and simple. If you want the longer version, please check out part 1 under logistics. What was my least favorite trail food, or the food that I will never eat again? So it took some time, but my least favorite trail food, I have 2. My least favorite trail foods is ramen. I never did a ramen bomb. I thought those were so disgusting watching other people eat them, but ramen did not last in the menu very long. I wanted to like it, but it was so gross and tasteless, and it really wasn't that filling. I found instant potatoes to be way more filling than ramen, so I ditched ramen quite early on and never looked back. But the thing that I think was my least favorite thing by the end that I never want to eat again is tuna on a tortilla. Like, it just, ugh. Tortillas in general, I don't ever really want to eat another one. I don't want to eat it with tuna. Even though I started adding like Miracle Whip and munchies to try and make it better, and it was a lot better that way. It's still just one of those things that I'm like, if I never eat another tuna wrap in my life again, I'll be quite happy. Would I handle my food resupply strategy different if I were to do it again? No. I quite liked what I did. In part one, I did mention a couple of things that I'll re-mention here. I found that purchasing from town to town worked really well for me. It was the only time I did do resupply boxes was in Washington, mainly because Washington's resupply options are not as good. And honestly, for me, for the majority of the desert, trail towns were really stressful. So if I could go back in time and ship ahead some more boxes in key places, I might do that. I found Mount Laguna to be a place that was not good for resupply. I know they rave up that store. It's good that it's there, but they are very limited in their options. And so if you don't like Cliff Bars, you're not going to be eating for a few days. Let's just put it at that. So there's certain places that I would have changed up my strategy. Mount Laguna is one. I would either send a box there or I would carry enough food all the way to Julian, despite what the experts say. That is what I would do. I found that the resupply in Acton was iffy, and there was no resupply in Agua Dulce. Do not plan to get a resupply in Agua Dulce. Now, having said that, the owners of the Serenity Oasis, they did have some resupply options that were available, which was a godsend because they had things that Acton didn't have. Acton was actually, it was a good grocery store, but it did not have the things that hikers need. So if I could do it again, I might send a resupply box to one of those two places. The other place that I would send a resupply box or just plan for better would be Hikertown. So I chose to go into Weevil Market, and they had nothing. Everything in Far Out said that between Hikertown, Weevil, and the one in the middle, and I can't remember the name of it, that Weevil was the best. And when I got there, I don't know if it was just at the end of their like if they were waiting for a restock or what, but they had no food. Like none. Like they had a pack of 50 tortillas, and that was about it. And I wasn't gonna buy 50 tortillas to go 3 days to Tehachapi, right? So I ended up having enough food in my pack that I managed to get through that section, but don't count on Hikertown and the other place and Weevil being a good place to get food. In my experience, it was bad. And then, of course, I jumped ahead. But everywhere after that, I found actually pretty good. NorCal's resupplies were really good. And the only place in Washington that I would not send a box to next would be Trout Lake. That general store had an amazing hiker resupply. And had I known it was going to be that awesome, based on my previous experiences of the small general store, convenience stores, I was like, nope, I'm not risking it. That was one I could have risked. They had a really good resupply. What was my favorite trail food? I skipped over this one earlier. My favorite trail food, I kind of said some of them already, like the Pro bars I really, really liked. But I think my favorite thing on trail I find really funny is peanut M&Ms. I could not get enough of those. Loved them. Had to have them. There was just something about the peanut M&Ms that just really spoke to me. And I had to have them. And I hate peanuts. And I never in my life, never ate an M&M peanut at home. And I have not touched them since. But on trail, oh my gosh, they were the best. And then I think my second favorite trail food was probably gummy nerds. Those are really good. Did your diet change much as your hike progressed? And then in parentheses, as an older hiker, we seem to need more nutrition. So yes, my diet was a bit of a roller coaster. I started out with a pretty good diet. I think I always had tuna. I always had like cheese, tortillas. Like I was pretty conscious about trying to be well-rounded. I took greens every morning, that kind of thing. But then when I got to it was San Jacinto, my pack when we went up there was much too heavy. I ended up bailing off the mountain early because I felt like I was going to injure myself with the weight of my pack. So I dropped back down into Idlewild to ship some stuff home. And in the same time of that mind frame of I need to lighten my pack, I started looking at my food and I ended up cutting out anything that was heavy. So I cut out tortillas. I cut out tuna. So I basically had cheese, crackers, and salami, and a whole whack of Rice Krispie treats, and like just sugar. I had lots of lightweight sugar, and in doing so, I cut out a lot of good protein sources. And so by the time I got to Tehachapi, even prior to Tehachapi, I was in rough shape. I didn't have enough protein in me to repair my muscles every day, so my body was just completely breaking down. So heading back into the trail in NorCal, I had to rethink my food strategy. I had to add back the tortillas and the tuna. I had to make sure I was getting enough protein and enough variety. So that definitely changed. The other thing that changed was like my snacks kind of ebbed and flowed. Things that I was eating in the desert, I was eating something completely different by, NorCal and Washington. I had dropped the Rice Krispie treats. I had picked up the peanut M&Ms. I had picked up caramel popcorn. I always had gummy treats on me, like Lifesavers or the gummy nerds. Things like that. My dinners kind of progressed too. I kind of started out doing the ramen thing and really didn't like that. So what I ended up doing more midway through was a combination of either instant potatoes and stovetop stuffing with some cranberries in there to kind of have like a little turkey dinner. And sometimes I would throw like pork or chicken or tuna in there and like basically have a little Thanksgiving dinner every night. So I would do that, and or I would try and do half and half of the potatoes and a backpacking meal, and I would spend the extra money to get a backpacking meal simply because there's more good stuff in those. Like there's more protein and things, and they're not that heavy to carry. So my food did evolve throughout and changed throughout the trip for sure. Did you ever experience issues with critters getting into your pack or tent because of keeping food inside the tent at night? No, I didn't. And I have a theory about this because I know that some people do experience this problem. And so I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I don't want to say that anybody's done anything bad or wrong or whatever. And maybe if you've had experience with critters and what I'm about to say didn't apply to you, then it doesn't apply to you, and I mean no offense. I strongly believe that people that have issues with critters are not being cognizant of where they're leaving their food and, the breadcrumbs they're leaving behind, per se, or so to speak. So I always kept my food inside my tent. I always keep my pack inside my tent. And I keep it both, like if I kept food in the pockets of my pack, I would keep the pockets away from the outer wall. So I wouldn't have them facing or touching the outer wall. I would have them facing in and like touching my mat. I would have my food bag on the inside touching my mat, and I would keep my water bottles and other things, like in between my food and the outer wall of my tent. That way, and anything else that I had in there, I would keep away from the walls. That way, if mice and other critters were running around, they're not as apt to be like, oh, I smell something right there, I need to go get it, right? Like, they're not as apt to smell it because it's not right there. The people that I personally experienced that had issues, I mean, they were a little less cognizant of that. They would leave food in their pack, in their hip belts, and leave their packs outside and then wonder why their hip belts got eaten. Or they would leave their pack outside with a granola bar in the mesh pocket and then wonder why the mesh got eaten. Or they would, as they ate, they would drop peanuts, or they would drop like granola crumbles. And then now you have crumbs inside your tent and or in your pack, and then you wonder why the critters are coming in. So basically what I'm saying is, if you just keep a neat and tidy tent, and if you keep a neat and tidy food bag, keep it away from the outer walls, you're gonna be fine. Hope I didn't offend anybody. Sorry if I did. So the next question, kind of already answered this. Where did you keep your food at night? I kept my food in my tent like 90% of the trail. And as a Canadian who lives in Grizz country, I really debated on this going into this. It was, I think, the single most thing that I struggled with the most, because I knew that most thru hikers tend to do this. As a Canadian Grizz country, I would never do this. I would never keep my food in my tent. I would always hang it, or at least on a bear hang, or wrap it on the tree, or like hide it really well or something. I would never keep my food in my tent. But I did on this trip, and I feel good about it. Now, having said that, once I got to Washington, the closer we got to home, the more and more a little like, Grizz don't really understand what the border crossing is. Like, they could technically be here. But I will say that in the Snoqualmie Baker area, I did keep my food outside. I had an earth sack for that section, and I would tie my food to a tree. Because you had to have your food in a bear approved container of some kind. So that section, I did follow that rule, and I did keep my food outside of my tent. But for every other area, I would have it in my Dyneema pack from CPACs, and I would just keep it in my tent. So the next question and last question in the food resupply, and this isn't really food related, it's about water, but I thought I would answer it here. Why was your water always kind of a brown, green, icky color? Was that the water, or did you put something in it? That's a great question. I put something in it. The water on the trail is typically beautiful and clear, unless you're getting it from like an icky trough. But most of the water on the trail is really quite lovely. Whenever my water was kind of like a brownish green, I always drank some greens in the morning. So that's what you were witnessing. I would put a scoop of my greens, and then I would mix a little bit of juice in with it, so it would make it kind of a funky color. Sometimes I would have iced tea in there. Yeah, so it would make it kind of this weird icky color. So that's what I was drinking. It wasn't disgusting water. Okay, let's move on to gear. Okay, so gear. Did you have the right supplies? Too much, too little? What are the must-haves? I would say overall, I think I did have the right gear. I did start out with a little bit heavier of like sleep clothes. I started out with a heavier or a higher R-rated value mat that initially I didn't want to bring, but because the storms kept hitting and kept hitting and kept hitting, my start date was April 6th, and like even the week before we left to head down there, like it was still storming. So I was concerned about being cold. So I brought more of my winter gear with me to start, and that I had to swap out fairly quickly because it was too heavy, and I didn't need it. Like, I got really lucky. I had no inclement weather until Washington. So I hit California in the most beautiful 2-day section like ever. Everybody 2 days before me and everybody 2 days after me hit all kinds of weather, but I had none. So I mean, I think overall I had the right supplies after I got rid of, those extra heavier things right in the beginning. What are the must-haves? I mean, you gotta have a mat that's comfortable. You gotta have a sleeping bag or a quilt that is warm enough for you and that's comfortable. And you gotta have a pack that's comfortable. And even a tent, honestly. And I think a lot of people get caught up in how much something weighs, and that becomes the only thing that's important, and comfort goes out the window. And I think that's a mistake. I think that you really should consider functionality and being comfortable, being warm, and what else does this piece of gear offer me besides being lightweight? But we can get into that another time. How many shoes did you use and what kind? Which were the most comfortable and durable? So overall, I had 4 different pairs of shoes. I started off with the Ultra Temps, and I wore them all the way to Acton. Then I had Topo Run Ventures, which I wore to Tehachapi and then got rid of. They were awful. So the Temps, my feet were already hurting, but it was manageable. The Topos, oh my gosh, my feet in that week that I wore them, my feet had never hurt that bad. And my feet hurt pretty bad in the beginning of the desert because my socks were too tight and too hot. But oh, those Topos just destroyed my feet. They were so awful. And I also developed toe or metatarsal neuroma. And I saw Blaze or Morgan in Tehachapi, and she's like, you have to get rid of those Topos. They are awful for your feet. So I obeyed. I ended up switching to the Hoka Challengers, and they were so much better. And I wore 2 pairs of the Hoka Challengers after that. Of all the 4 shoes that I wore, I would say the Hokas were definitely the most comfortable and probably definitely the most durable. They held up really well. Grip-wise, they were pretty comparable to the Temps. Every 350 miles, I would have to get new ones. The saying or the belief of a shoe can go 500 miles, that's just not true. It's 350. Because by then your grip is gone and your cushion is completely gone. The shoe is toast. So please switch your shoes out at 350 miles. Don't go to 500. Your feet will thank you for it. But yeah, I would say the Hokas were definitely comparable grip-wise to the Temps, but they definitely held up better. They have more durable fabric. So yeah, they didn't fall apart quite as quickly as the Ultras did. What are the must-haves in a thru hike backpack? So I'm assuming that this means like the must-haves in the backpack itself, not what's inside the backpack. So I hope that I am interpreting this question right. For me, the most important thing about a backpack is when you put it on, do you feel it? And that might sound stupid because yes, you're going to feel it. It's on you. You got 30 to 40 pounds in there, you're going to feel it. But what I mean is when you put it on, 10 minutes later, do you even notice that it's there? Does it become a part of your body? Or, does the hip belt dig in and it hurts? Do the shoulder straps dig in and do they hurt? So to me, the number one important thing in a backpack is that it fit you correctly. If it hurts you in any way, it is not the pack for you. And I highly recommend getting a custom fit pack. Ospreys are great, Gregory's are great, Deuter's great, but they are not, they're general. They're a general size. Oh, like you're between a medium and a large. Here's whatever. But because they are not custom made to you, they are not going to fit you right. So I just personally believe that everyone should have a custom made pack. It's going to make your trip so much better if you put your pack on and 10 minutes later, you don't even know that it's there. I think the second thing that is really important in a backpack is to have load lifters, so that you can adjust where the load is. If it's leaning back too far, like you can pull it forward and then it adjusts your stability. The third thing that I think is super important in a backpack, is to have an adjustable hip belt. And by adjustable, I mean that you can remove it and get a smaller or a larger one depending on your body weight. So, and I attest to this personally because I started the PCT with a large hip belt. I switched out to a medium in Chester, and by the time we were done in Washington, I needed a small. So it's super important to be able to switch that out. If it is stuck, if it's a stuck feature of your backpack and you slim down to the point where you can no longer tighten it anymore, it is no longer doing you any good, right? And if you can't switch that out unless you get a whole new backpack, like what a waste of money that backpack now was, because you can't adjust it to your adjusting body. So in my opinion, that is super important. It's super important to look for an adjustable or removable hip belt in a backpack. What items did you just not need? This is a really hard one. I don't know that I carried much that I just did not need, except I'm gonna go with a sleeping bag liner. And here's my reason. I don't use sleeping bag liners as sleeping bag liners. I get all twisted up in them and I get claustrophobic and I don't like how it feels. I have a sleeping bag that I think does keep me warm enough and I quite enjoy it just on its own. I would rather throw, my puffy on or warmer pants on than sleep in a liner. But what I did use a liner for was I would slip my mattress inside of the liner. For a couple of reasons. One, so that I'm not laying directly on a cold air mattress because they are cold and I found that it just adds a little bit of extra warmth. And two, because it protects the mat from dirt, dust, grime, sand. It can just help preserve the integrity of the mat. A lot of people get holes in their mats from the sand. So if you have a liner, it's just helping to protect it. And number three, I absolutely cannot stand, it's like nails on a chalkboard to me, the sound of an air mattress rubbing on the tent floor. That's the worst noise in the world. But at the end of the day, I really didn't need my sleeping bag liner because, everybody else's mats are squeaking against the tent floor, so it's really no different if mine does. And so in the end, I ended up getting rid of it because it was an extra thing that I was carrying. And yeah, I just at some point decided that it was no longer worth it. So if you're not going to use a liner for its actual purpose, just leave it at home. Did I carry a backup water filtration system? If yes, what was it? So my main water filtration system was the Katadyn Be Free. I carried the 1 liter bottle as well as the 3 liter bottle. And I loved it. I love the Be Free. I did go through a few filters, but I really don't care about that. Once it started to get a little bit hard, I would just get a new one. I really don't care about how long they typically last before. I had a bad experience with the Sawyer, and I switched to the Be Free, and I've never looked back, and I'm totally good with my choice. But as for a backup system, the only thing that I did was I did carry the Aquamira tabs for a while. But again, after a while, I got rid of those too. I just found that they weren't really needed. And if you happen to be in a place where your filter failed, you're always with or around other people. So even if mine happened to not work, I could have borrowed Leonie's, and vice versa. So I didn't really see the need to have a backup system. What air mattress do I recommend? So I personally recommend the Big Agnes. It's now called the Big Agnes Rapid. My original one was a Q-Core something or other, but now it's called the Rapid. But anyway, it's a red one. Absolutely love it. It's about 4.2 R value rating. I just really love that mat. It's thick. It's like about that thick, and the ends kind of are a little bit taller than the middle, so it kind of keeps you from rolling off your mattress. It doesn't crinkle and crunch and make as much noise as the Thermarests do. It's quite light. I love the air pump sack that comes with it. Yeah, that is my recommendation. The Big Agnes Rapid. What gear did I end up swapping out for something else? So I did swap out an air mattress. I started with the Sea to Summit. I don't even remember the name of it, honestly, but it was more of a winter sleeping pad, and it had some major manufacturer defects. The bevels kept getting little holes in them. So I ended up switching that out for my Big Agnes Rapid. And that honestly was about it for true swap outs. I did end up swapping out socks. I started with the Darn Tough. I think they were the mid-weight ones. Way too hot for the desert. And Darn Toughs are way too compressive. So when my feet started to swell, they had nowhere to go and they were just so hot. So I ended up switching to some icebreakers, and those were a lot better. I switched out my shorts. I started with Patagonia Barely Baggies, which were ironically much too baggy and created chafing like I've never felt in my entire life. They were awful. So by the time I got to Julian, so 1 week in those things, I tossed them. And I was wearing a pair of spandex bike shorts after that till Chester. And at that point, I had lost enough weight that I could fit back into my mech shorts that I had worn the year before. So mech is the Canadian version of REI, if you're interested. So clothing swap outs, I had more of those than anything. I swapped out my burgundy t-shirt for a blue t-shirt, but they were both the Outdoor Research Echo t-shirts. I wore the t-shirt instead of the long sleeve shirt because despite what everybody tells you, long sleeves do not necessarily keep you cooler. They did not keep me cooler. I felt way cooler in a t-shirt. So yeah, I swapped out clothing more than anything. What gear did I end up leaving behind? What gear did I keep longer than anticipated? So again, I ended up leaving like my sleeping bag liner behind. I did carry some snow gaiters for a while. I left them behind. I had a pee bottle for a while. I left that behind. Yeah, just little things like that. I had some down mittens that I really didn't need. I got rid of my beanie. I got rid of my waterproof over mitts until Washington. I got those back in Washington. Just little stuff like that. But what did I keep longer than anticipated? I don't really think anything. Maybe, if anything, I think I kept my ice axe and my microspikes longer than anticipated. I kept them well into NorCal. Mainly because of my experience on Baden-Powell, I think kind of scared me about the snow, so I didn't want to be without those things if we ran into snow. Yeah, but other than that, I think I kept everything pretty much on purpose and not like thought that I would get rid of it early on and then didn't. What did I end up sending away when I did my first pack shakedown? So again, it was things like my fleece pants, my winter gaiters, my beanie, my glove, my down mittens, yeah, just clothing things more than anything. If you can hear that, that's my dog. He's sleeping and dreaming. Poor guy. Yeah, so I just sent, and I sent my pee bottle home. I just sent a bunch of like little things that were just creating volume and taking up space and adding extra weight to my pack. What is my evaluation of my backpack? Did it carry the weight well, even when full of food and heavy? So I use the ULA Catalyst. So it is a 75-liter backpack, which I will admit it is overkill for a trail like the PCT. However, I live in Canada, I hike in the Rockies, and often I take my dog with me. And in Canada, in the Rockies, you have to have warmer gear than you need on the PCT. So I wanted a pack that I could also use at home as well as on the PCT. So that is why I went with the Catalyst. But I will say there is not a single thing about that backpack that I don't like. I love it because it is fully customized to my height, my stature, and again, the hip belt is removable, so I was able to adjust it down as I lost weight. Because it's fitted to my body, it is so incredibly comfortable. And again, it doesn't matter how much weight is in it. It never hurts. It never pulls on my shoulders. It never digs into my back. It never digs into my hips. You know, I never feel something poking me or just being like uncomfortable often. And my pack has been, I've carried 40 pounds. I've carried up to 50 pounds in that pack. And at 50 pounds, it was definitely at that point, like it's rated for 40 pounds. So at 50 pounds, it was a little less uncomfortable, but still not bad. But at 40 pounds and less, I swear to you, I put that pack on and 5-10 minutes later, I don't even know I'm wearing it. It is that comfortable. I love it. I love everything about it. So yes, it carries the weight incredibly well. And I think because of my height and my torso length, because I've seen other Catalysts and they don't quite look the same as mine. Mine is wide and deep. Traditional packs are narrow and tall, so they end up sticking like above your head. Mine never comes higher than like right here because most of the weight is carried that way. Like it's carried out past me. Sorry, not sideways, but like out behind me. So the most of the weight is actually like centered right here and then out. So its center of gravitation is different than a normal pack. A normal pack, it's up here. You can feel it doing this. You can feel it swaying and moving around. I don't feel that with mine at all. So even when full of food and it's heavy, it's still super comfortable and really great pack. I can't rave ULA enough. What did your pack weigh when you first began the trail, and what did it weigh at the end? I never weighed my pack. Not once. Because I didn't care. Didn't want to know. I have weighed it in the past on other backpacking trips, and typically it's anywhere from 30 to 40 pounds. If I had to guess what it was at the beginning, I would say probably 40. And by the end, I would say it was probably closer to 25 to 30. But yeah, I never weighed it because I am not a subscriber of base weight. I hate the concept and the conversations around base weight. I understand that there could be some value in it just to make sure that that your essentials are maybe lighter than what, other options could be like if you've got a 5-pound sleeping bag, you might want to switch that out for something that's 2 or less. Same with your tent, etc., etc. So I get the concept of it, but I don't subscribe to base weight because that is not what you're carrying. You're carrying your carrying weight. And that matters. That matters just as much, if not more, than base weight does. So I subscribe to the philosophy of I have carried anywhere from 30 to 50 pounds. I know that I am most comfortable at a max of 40. So I want to be at 40 or less. And coming into this, having done all the backpacking that I have done in the previous years, I already knew what my gear and my food and all that was going to weigh. So I already knew that I was going to be around that 35 to 40 pounds. So I didn't have to weigh my pack, if that makes sense. And I think that it's important to keep sight of your overall pack weight because you can reduce your pack weight in things that are not necessarily categorized in the base weight category. So I think all of the weight, all encompassing weight, is the most important weight to look at, not just base weight. And I know I added my own topic in that question, but I'm not adamant about it. Anyway, carrying on. Where did you find the straw for your water bottle? So if you noticed, I always had a sports cap on my water bottle, and there was like this little plastic straw that was coming out of it. I cannot take credit for this because it was actually Kelly Hayes that did this first, and I don't know if it was her idea or if she saw it somewhere, but anyway, I saw this from Kelly Hayes and I thought that is genius. I'm going to do that too. So what I did was I had a sports cap on my water bottle, and then I went to a hardware store and I bought a coil of that PVC plastic tubing, made sure that it would go through the hole of the sports cap, and then I just cut them to lengths, and I had a new length of this tubing sent to me every month so I could swap it out because they would get kind of gunky after a while. So that's what I used. Probably not food grade. I don't know. Maybe I'll end up with throat cancer because of it. I don't know. But yeah, I just went to the hardware store and bought some tubing, and it was super cheap, super easy. Again, though, like if you're really concerned about things being food grade, then don't do that. But I really didn't care. So, and it worked amazing. And then when I wanted to take it, like if I wasn't using my bottle, if I was going to throw it in the back of a truck, I would just push the straw into the bottle and then close the sports cap, and it worked perfect. Let's see. Do you think your foot pain was partially related to shoe size? So if you recall, I had a ton of foot pain in the desert section, like unbelievable foot pain. And no, it was not shoe size related whatsoever. I wear a size 8 in shoes, and my hiking shoes are a 9 to 9.5. So I'm already 1 to 1.5 full sizes larger in a hiking shoe than I am in a normal shoe. It was not the size of my shoe. My issues were mainly two things. In the beginning, my socks were too tight and they were too hot. So I needed looser fitting socks so that when my feet would expand and swell, they had somewhere to go. And I needed a little lighter weight because they were just so heavy and hot. And then that did not help when my feet were already getting hot. So it just compounded the problem. The second major issue was that the Ultras I was wearing were not cushioned or supportive enough. And the Topos were even worse. They were so much worse. And I know a lot of people have had success with Topos, but they just were not for me at all. So yeah, I needed a more of a cushion and a more of a stable, solid shoe. So those were my two main issues. That gave me a lot of that foot pain. Why did you never wear sunglasses? Because I hate them. I never wear sunglasses at home. I only ever wear sunglasses when I'm driving because I have to, because the sun irritates my eyes that way when I'm driving. But I never wear sunglasses typically. I don't like wearing them hiking. I get really hot really easily. My face sweats a lot, and I find when I wear sunglasses, they just keep slipping off my face because my face is so sweaty, and I can't be bothered. It just bugs me. And also, hiking and looking through a lens, it just changes how my eyes see things, and I don't like it. I just don't like how my brain interprets it or something. I don't know. I just don't like wearing them. I had them, but I never wore them. If I had done the Sierra and there had been a ton of snow, I probably would have wore them then just for the snow blindness thing. But having said that too, I hike a lot at home in the winter, and I don't ever wear sunglasses at home. So I don't know. I just don't like them. What did I use for food storage in Washington? I already answered this in the food resupply. I used an Ursack. So I would actually carry my food in my Dyneema bag inside my pack during the day. And then at night, I would transfer everything to the Ursack and tie it to a tree. So that's it for part 2. We covered food resupply and gear. In part 3, I'm going to try and wrap this up in 3, but I've got social, trail aspects, body, and future plans. So there might even be a part 4. We'll see. Bye.